there's nothing special about anything that any of us can do if everyone else can do exactly the same thing. AI can create a pretty decent research report for anyone, but the only person who can get it to write in my voice or to help me think through my thinking, the only person who can do that is me. At this point, I get more utility from my ChatGPT subscription than I do from most of my team members. But that's not because it's replacing anything any of them can do. It's just multiplying what I can do. And a lot of people are trying to use AI as kind of like a way of replacing their gym time with like 7-minute workout.
It can, but you'd have to be a real expert. Like you'd have to have a Carol bike.
So here's the big shift, right? The fuel for insight is context. That's true whether you're AI, whether you're human, right? The more context we have, the better position we are to have insight.
Danny, it's so great to have you on the show.
Stephan, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so let's first of all maybe start with your superhero origin story. How did you end up being such a successful, savvy marketer and business mogul?
I'm flattered. I don't know if I would describe myself as such, but since you said it, I'm not going to argue. But so the really quick backstory is that I've been an entrepreneur, I like to say, for longer than my adult life. I quit school when I was 15 to start my first business. And I bounced around a bunch of different business opportunities and ideas. And in my 20s was my first attempt at like a, in air quotes, like a big startup. We were building educational software, so games that help kids learn how to read. And it could be a very long story, but long story short, I was a very young, very inexperienced CEO in what in hindsight is a very complicated industry. And we'd raised a bunch of money from friends and family and grants and that sort of thing. And by the time I figured out how to make it work, we were running out of money. It was time to raise more. I worked the plan together. I hit the pavement to raise money. That was September of 2008. So the markets crashed. There was no money to be had. It all fell apart. And I didn't want to tell my investors, who were mostly friends and family, that their money was gone. So I took the losses on personally. And I walked away from that with like $250,000 in personal debt. And for anyone who's watching or listening to this, who's never been through something like that, it feels a lot like going through a really bad breakup. And after you go through a really bad breakup, you're not ready to start dating again right away. And so I was like, all right, I've got to make some money. I'd really like to be able to pay my rent, but I don't want to, hire a bunch of employees. I don't want to raise money. I don't want to do any of that stuff. And so I was like, what can I do within those constraints? So I started a blog teaching things I'd learned about marketing and business along the way. And it was the right message for the right market at the right time. And I can share more of the story, but long story short, again, that turned into Mirasee, which at this point, I've had hundreds and hundreds of people work for me. We've raised a bunch of money. All the things that I was like, this is not what I want. Sometimes you find your destiny on the path you took to avoid it. So that's the short version. I'm happy to elaborate any part of it that you'd like me to.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, congratulations on your success. So where are you taking this to? Because this is a very interesting time to be alive, right?
It is a very interesting time to be alive. When I think about our mission as an organization, something I say often to my coaches is that we're not in the business of creating successful businesses. We're in the business of creating successful entrepreneurs. And their success is a byproduct of that, but it's their growth, their competence that it's our job to cultivate. And like you said, very interesting time to be alive. The online education, learning, and development space is probably at its biggest inflection point that it's ever been, at least in my career. There are obviously geopolitical influences that are making a lot of people scared to buy or take forward action right now. AI is, of course, an enormous disruptor that I think a lot of people are still just beginning to get their heads around what it means. And when I see a lot of the AI teaching out there, I kind of feel like it's missing the point. So there's a lot that makes it a very exciting time right now.
Yeah. Do you know the book, The Diamond Age? It's by Neil Stephenson. It's a science fiction book. It's a really good one, and I would recommend it because the subtitle is A Young Lady's Illustrated Primer. That primer is an AI that is her tutor, her mentor, her best friend, her confidant, and her guardian. She's like an orphan, and she's making her way through this high-tech world that isn't just full of AI, but also full of molecular nanotechnology. So that means that the nano machines can make more of themselves. And that is as big a paradigm shift for humanity as AI, maybe bigger. So it really gets you thinking outside the box and where things could be going. You know, the Wayne Gretzky quote, skate to where the puck is going. This is going to help you to see where the puck is going. I would recommend it. And then also Snow Crash, another book by Anil that is more near term, but both are going to give you, I think, great insights and perspectives on the future, in the near future.
Cool, thank you. I wrote down both titles.
Yeah. So you got some what VC money or angel money or both? You hired a whole big team. Like how many people do you have working for you? How much money did you take on? And give us whatever you're comfortable or legally allowed to share.
Sure. So we went a different route for raising capital. We did it relatively late in our journey. We'd already grown quite large, and this was to finance kind of the next step. So a couple of years ago, we actually created a financial instrument, and that was a hugely interesting undertaking. It had been a long time since I took something on when there was so much that I didn't know that I didn't know. But we created a kind of pseudo bond where the return is linked to our revenue growth. And we offered that to a lot of people within our community, and a bunch of them jumped in. So we raised maybe like $1.5 million, which I'm very glad that we had during the last couple of years of dramatic evolution and pivot. We didn't use it for what we thought we'd use it for, but we used it to continue to learn and grow, and that's been really great to have. And then in terms of team, at our largest, I think we were close to 100 people, and we've contracted a little bit, getting more efficient. I think we're probably about 60 people now.
Mm. You know, the Mind Valley CEO, Vishen Lakhiani, told a big audience recently, it was at the Mind Valley Awards, and included a lot of his staff, that, you know, we have 600 staff, and I can't imagine we're going to have nearly that many staff in a year's time because of the advances in AI. And these people in the room, include his current employees, are listening to this. And I think, wow, that maybe might not go over so well. But on the other hand, I mean, at least he's being transparent about it. I mean, it's like the writing's on the wall, really. So, how many of those 60 employees do you think you're going to have in a year's time?
It's a really good question. And the honest answer is that I don't know, and I'm not sure. I've said publicly, at least to students and people in my programs, with people on my team on the line, that like at this point, I have very, very smart, very talented people working for me. At this point, I get more utility from my ChatGPT subscription than I do from most of my team members. But that's not because it's replacing anything any of them can do. It's just multiplying what I can do. And so the real question is, it's not like I think, oh, AI means I'm only going to need half my team or something like that. It's more a question of, is everyone going to ramp up with their use of AI as quickly as they need to? Because I'd love to keep everyone, and I think there's a good argument and justification for doing that if everyone continues to grow and expand at the pace that they need to. But I mean, if people don't, then yeah, it's going to be a problem. I've said this to people on my team, and I've said this in a bunch of places. I mean, I think in the next 6 to 18 months, like people who don't seriously develop a skill set with AI, they're not going to be viable. And that's not a Mirasee thing. That's a global economy thing.
Yeah. I've said the same thing to multiple people, including my dad. It doesn't work for me, but you know, he works at a company for 30 years, and they're rolling in some new software, in the next, I don't know, month or so. And it's going to reduce the amount of work required by him and his team. It's like the writing's on the wall. You need to start learning how to use ChatGPT. He didn't install it on his phone. He doesn't have an account. It's like this may be the last job you ever have. So I'm trying.
And it's tricky because I mean, I get it. Like, I'm not an early adopter of technology generally, right? I think a lot of people, a lot of things rather, like the hype greatly exceeds the reality. And I've seen a lot of fads come and go. And I'm glad that I never got on board. And so that was my instinct initially with AI as well. And but that being said, when I started seeing just the scale of the impact, I was like, this is different. This is not something that you can sit out. But the challenge is that if you're really on the periphery and you're not even looking closely enough to understand the impact, then it looks like any other fad.
Yeah. But this is so fundamentally different. And if you're not at the coalface actually running these prompts, like you're already lost. Like you might know what vibe coding is, but if you're not writing a 200 character or 200 word more like prompt of telling it to write an app, I just ran one that was based on the GPT-5 demo, and it was for learning Hebrew. And it worked on the first go. I just hit run code from the button on the top right, and it just worked. I could do flashcards. It actually pronounced the Hebrew and really well. And oh yeah, I know that one. I don't know that one, etc. I was able to use this. And why would you pay for, let's say, Duolingo or something, especially if they're just using AI too now and letting all their employees go? There was a big brouhaha about that. Like, why wouldn't I be telling it to code an app, just like I tell it to write a research report or a marketing plan? Of course, it's just another output. So if people are afraid to have it on their phone, afraid to talk to it, have a conversation with it on their way to work, they're left behind. They're already behind. They're already probably obsolete, sadly.
But I think we're kind of, whenever you have a new innovation, the early days, you have an advantage because you're one of the first ones there, and then eventually it becomes a disadvantage that you're the only one who's not. I think we're kind of in that tipping point where I don't think people are too far behind, but I don't think they have a lot of time to start getting serious about it. And the good part is that it's easy to get serious about. So, just because someone is in air quotes behind doesn't mean they can't catch up. And I've worked with a lot of people who I'm like, you've got to get serious about this and I can help you. And, they have a ton of fun with it. It's really liberating in terms of what you can do.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how are you using AI in novel ways that if the listener or the viewer is, hearing you explain this, they're like, wow, that's really cool. And maybe I'll just go first to give you an example, and then I'll have you go ahead. I don't know of any other podcaster besides me who's taking the episodes and turning it into a full blown online course, video based, 3 modules, like 20 minutes each per module, using Claude to create the outline and the quizzes, multiple choice quizzes uh, for each module, and a workbook with reflection questions and exercises and so forth. And then the videos are created using 11 labs for the narration in the guest's voice and my voice. And then the video is done with a combination of tools. We're probably going to switch to using like VO3, but what we've used in the past with this is, yeah, it's advanced a lot since then. We first tried InVideo, which was okay, but didn't end up suiting us that well. So, anyways, this is something that we've put out just in a pilot. We like Mary Resenbeck episode on Get Yourself Optimized. That one we do have a course which is based on partially on the material in the episode, but not only that material. So this was an episode on homeschooling. So there's some other models besides just Waldorf and Montessori that I didn't even know about, Ed Regio or something like that, that I had never even heard of. And I'm homeschooling my little one, where my wife is actually doing most of the work there. But we didn't know about this Ed Regio style. And that was brought in, wasn't from the episode, it was from other materials on the internet. And it's just like, wow, this is really cool, because a podcast is fun, entertaining, maybe edutainment, but it's not as practical and actionable as a course that was developed to be a course. So why not kind of morph it into that from a podcast? And that's something I think eventually all the really big podcasters, I would imagine, will do. But I'm just the first to come up with it and to implement it. So I plan to roll this out across both my shows, and it's going to get infinitely faster and cheaper and easier to do in these coming weeks or months. So how about you? Now you go.
I mean, that's really interesting. So when I think about what is the great, I mean, there's a ton of stuff you can do with a lot of tools. And it's very hard, in my experience at least, without really getting into it and playing with it at length and depth and creating things and seeing how the quality is when it comes out and seeing the traction or lack thereof. It's very hard to tell the difference between the stuff that is, earth-shatteringly valuable and the stuff that is cool but more like a party trick. It's like, that's really cool, but you look beneath the surface and it's not that impressive, right? Like, the vibe coding thing is a good example. I mean, you can go from zero to a prototype super fast. But when you look at, the development of commercial software, I think the statistic is that AI has accelerated the pace of development by 3%, right? Which is not dramatic. And that's because it's really good at like the high level, let's throw something together quick and dirty. The underlying architecture is not great. It doesn't fit in. Like, there's a lot to be done there. And so separating the gimmicky stuff from the really substantive value, I think is really important, because there's a never ending list of new gimmicky things you can try, right? Like, there are 10,000 new apps coming out every day. And so when I think about where do you really want to invest your energy and your attention, I always try to start from first principles. And first principles, whenever you have a new technological innovation, what technological innovations tend to do is democratize access to capability, right? So something that only an elite group was able to do before, and now more people can do. And if you're one of the first people in on that, then that conveys a first mover advantage. You could do really cool things, right? If you're the first person to figure out that you can use whatever, ChatGPT or Claude, to create social posts that are, you can create 10 times more in a tenth of the time, then you can get an advantage with a flood the zone kind of strategy. It doesn't matter if the stuff isn't as good. It's like, fine, but there's just so much of it and nobody else can keep up. But that only works for a little while. That only works when you're the only one who has it, right? So if we extrapolate out the reality that everyone is going to adopt this stuff eventually, we have to think about, well, what does that mean when everyone has it? And like, I think an enormous glut, an explosion of content is not going to make anyone stand out, right? Being able to tell ChatGPT, hey, write me a research report. Let's go further. Give me 20 different titles of research reports that would be valuable and attractive to entrepreneurs, and gives you the titles. Great. Create an outline for each one of them. Great. Draft it up. All right. Now I'm going to have 20 ebooks that I can put out there. And like, that sounds cool until you realize that, yeah, but everyone else can ask it to do the exact same thing. And there's nothing special about anything that any of us can do if everyone else can do exactly the same thing. Right? We don't stand out in that way. The only way we stand out is by doing something that is different. And in an age where the means of implementation, the means of execution are democratized, the only thing that we can do that is uniquely us is about our perspective, our experience, our point of view. So using AI to accelerate that, right? AI can create a pretty decent research report for anyone, but the only person who can get it to write in my voice or to help me think through my thinking, the only person who can do that is me, right? Because it's about the input, right? The way, I mean, I'm going to dramatically oversimplify the technology, and to be clear, I'm not an AI engineer, but all these LLMs, they're built on the technology of a vector database. So if you think of a really simple database, you've got an X and Y axis, like your times tables. If I say 7 times 6, you're like, okay, I'm going to go down to 6. I'm going to go across to 7. I found the right answer. So a vector
Which is
database has
42, which is on your t-shirt.
exactly. There you go.
show,
Clues within
show,
clues
show
within
the
clues.
viewers your t-shirt.
Yep. There you
D-
go.
don't
42.
panic. Life, the universe, and everything. That's a Venn diagram, and then the 42 is in the middle of the Venn diagram. And,
Exactly.
and why 42 for you?
Oh, because I just turned 42.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
And so that's from the life, the universe, and everything. That's from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Right. By Douglas Adams.
Yeah, fun trivia about that. You know how he came up with the number 42 as the answer to the life, the universe, and everything?
No, I don't. How?
Yeah, he was just looking out the window to his garden. He was stuck with trying to figure out what he's going to write there for the answer. And then this number 42 popped in his head, and he's like, that'll do. And so what I get about that is that was popped into his head by God, because 42 is a very important, symbolically important number. There's the 42 letter name of God, which is the basis of one of the most powerful prayers in Kabbalah, if not the most powerful prayer, which is the Anabacoa. Yeah, so that's not random that it's the number 42, because really the 42, that unity of God and all that is, there's nothing outside of God, there's nothing independent of God, is really kind of like the whole point of everything. And it's very fitting that that would be that supercomputer's output after, what was it in the book, 3 million years or some crazy amount?
A very long time. I forget, 3 million, 10 million, like a very long time.
Yeah, and it was just a very simple answer, but of course it's not random. So sorry for that little side, but I
No, it was great. But yeah, so coming vector databases. So instead of having the two axes, the two dimensions, you've got thousands of them, right? Maybe millions. You've got an enormous, almost infinite number of these dimensions. So how does it know where to go to find the right answer? Right? That's a function of the context that you give it. So if all you give it is instructions and the context is the same as anyone else could give, then the answers are going to be generic and nothing special. But the unique context that only I, only you, only each of us can provide is the context about us. And so the more we train AI to know and understand us, the more powerful of a tool it becomes to extend and augment our thinking, our learning, our ability to flesh out and solidify our ideas and then turn them into reality.
yeah. And a way I like to describe it is that the old programmer adage of garbage in, garbage out, the converse of that, gold in, gold out. So when you really put thought and intention and also desire and higher vibration, a greater degree of connection to your higher power while you're writing that prompt, you're going to get better output. You're going to get vastly better output. Just simply having that connection to your higher power while you're writing your prompt. I challenge anybody listening, try it and see if the output is vastly different from what you normally would get. It's going to be.
Yeah. When I started getting really deep into this, I started showing people on my team that I work with, and I work with my wife. She's my business partner. And she commented, and I've since quoted her in different places. She's like, because she was trying to share with people on the team, like, what's the difference? She's like, when I use my AI, it's like this junior VA. And I see Danny working with his, and it's like a senior strategist, right? And the whole difference is the context and, of course, asking better questions.
Yeah. Yeah, with intention, with intention. So, anyways, what would be an example of a use case? So, I back to that question. I shared my example. So, what's something that you do that is so much faster, so much better, so much more scaled?
I think the word faster is a trap. So I'll give you a use case, and I think it's illustrative, but I think faster is really a trap. So the way I see a lot of people try to use AI, like let's pretend the analogy is that I go to the gym for an hour 3 times a week, and a lot of people are trying to use AI as kind of like a way of replacing their gym time with like 7-minute workouts, and that doesn't work very well.
It can, but you'd have to be a real expert. Like you'd have to have a Carol bike, which does the hit high intensity.
Even then, like it's not at that same level. But the way I'm using AI, and I'll give you an example in a moment, I'm still spending the 3 hours. It's just that now it doesn't feel like I'm killing myself pumping iron. It feels like a leisurely stroll, and somehow I'm coming out of it 3 times as ripped. So that's what we're solving for. We're expanding the utility of the time you have. We're not trying to save time. But so with that, let's imagine a scenario where you just got an email from a client, someone you're working with, and they're frustrated and they're aggravated and they're mixing 17 different threads together and they're blaming you for things that are not really your responsibility. So it's this long, rambly, challenging email, and you're a little bit frustrated, a little bit triggered, a little bit defensive, and you want to help this person. So how would you have handled that before AI? You'd like fume a little bit, you'd go for a walk, you'd sit down, you'd like type something up. It would take you 45 minutes. You'd hit send, you'd feel just depleted. And it's definitely not the best email you could have written, but you're like, I have to get on with my day. There's only so much time I can spend on this. So the way I would handle that now, they gave me that email. I would save it as a PDF, drop it into AI, and I would say, this is an email I just got from a client, and I want to give you context. So don't reply with anything other than, is there more, until I tell you I'm done. So that's a perfect little hack, by the way, just to give the context so it doesn't like jump in with, well, would you like this or would you like that? Do you want me to turn this into a Notion document or It's like, no, don't give me suggestions. Just shut up and listen.
Yeah, I don't need you to be a sycophant or a yes man.
Exactly. So then I'll turn on the voice mode and I'll just start inputting and I'll just share everything. It doesn't have to be organized. So it's like, okay, first of all, I'm really pissed off by this email because she's clearly not remembering that I did this and that for her, and she's blaming me on this, and it's really not my fault, and dump all of it. Now, then I get into the content. So it's like, no, there are a few things here that are legitimate and they're important. I think she's missing the point on this thing, but that thing is really strategically important, and we really have to think about this in this way. So like this would be like 20 minutes of me doing a brain dump. And I'll often do this like walking around in my neighborhood, right? Just talking into my phone. So I'm moving, I'm getting it all off my chest. I share all the thinking. Then I'm like, okay, I think that's everything. What are the different angles that I could take in my response? Right? It's not like I just gave it the email. It's like, can you respond to my annoyed client? Right? This is all my thinking. But it's like, well, it seems like there's this. And I'm like, okay, well, I think this one makes sense. I don't agree with that one. Let's not forget this point. All right, draft a response that does all this. And I'll read the response. And I'll be like, okay, that's a good start, but the tone isn't right. I don't want it to, even if I'm feeling pissed off, I don't want that to come across in the message, right? Let's take the higher ground. Let's help this person move towards the way they need to be feeling and moving and acting. And it'll revise it. Maybe I'll do a couple rounds of that. Then I'll take that and I'll paste it into my email and I'll edit it. And none of the words may remain. It might completely change to be my language. I'm not copy and pasting ChatGPT's response to my client. I'm using it as a container to do the thinking and processing. So how long would all this take? Probably about the same hour that I would have spent otherwise, except now I'm not feeling drained. I'm not feeling depleted. It's a much better response that leads to a much better outcome, right? So in other words, I'm not trying to save the time. I'm spending the time I have to spend, but it's like, if I, instead of 1 hour, if I could take 5 hours, 10 hours to do this, how much better of a result would it be? And it's like, all right, let's cram that 5 or 10 hours worth of work into that 1 hour and do a really good job with it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a difference between effectiveness and efficiency. not trying to get efficient at things that aren't effective. That's a waste of time. So what's a strategic use case? Like something that you're doing that might be, I don't know, a new marketing method or channel. Just as an example, let's say that let's say I see that you're on a lot of podcasts. I'm like, wow, this guy Danny is prolific. He is everywhere on all these great shows, and he's talking about some of the same things that I talk about. So I could deploy a whole army of ChatGPT agents to scour the internet, finding every single occurrence of you on any podcast, analyze each of the podcasters, their reach, their follower counts and download numbers, whatever else I can find or the agent can find online, put that into a spreadsheet and analyze then in priority order which one should be reached out to, and then write draft emails hyper personalized based on uh, deep research on each of those guests, I mean, each of those hosts, so that I can pitch myself as a guest using the pitch emails that the agents proposed and saved as drafts. Like that's an example of a strategic use of ChatGPT agent.
So I like all of that, but the part I like the most is the part before all of that.
Okay.
Right. So that's all very focused on execution. The mistake people make, I find in general in business, they want to rush to execution. They're not really clear about what's the highest level strategic use case. So, I mean, you're a super smart guy with a lot of marketing experience. So, you kind of know what good answers are. But for a lot of people, and probably for me as well, I might start with, hey, ChatGPT, I've noticed that Stephan goes on a lot of really good podcasts and talks about similar things to me. What can I do with this insight? What are the different opportunities that this might suggest? I have some thoughts, but I want you to suggest some ideas first. And I'll get some ideas. I'm like, that's interesting. Let's come back to that. Go through a bunch of things. So here's what I was thinking. And I would share the whole thing. And then we talk about deploying. But I think, and throughout, it's like not, hey, do all these things. I'm thinking that this is how I would do it. What am I missing? What are the opportunities I'm not seeing? What are my blind spots?
Yeah, that's great. Like I just made an assumption, for example, that you'd be a great guest to R&D, rip off and duplicate. But that might not be the case. And if I ask great questions of ChatGPT to then do the analysis, I might get a better, more suited example or set of examples of guests who have been really much more in my niche and much more effective at getting on big shows. And then that's what we base all the analysis and the outreach on.
So here's the big shift, right? The fuel for insight is context. That's true whether you're AI, whether you're human, right? The more context we have, the better position we are to have insight. The challenge is that with humans, the incremental cost of context is high, right? Context is expensive because, like case in point, right? We've got a fixed amount of time on the clock and it's going to run out. And then I've got to go do something else. You've got to go do something else. People get distracted, right? You go down one rabbit hole and they lose track of where you were starting. People get impatient, right? I mean, I've shared in some context, the way I began going down this rabbit hole was actually with a medical exploration. I have a particular medical condition. The details are not important, but I've struggled with it for a very long time. And I've seen all the doctors and I've tried everything and nothing helped. And maybe because I had just read Peter Attia's book Outlive and I just watched a bunch of episodes of House MD and I was desperate. I was like, you know what, ChatGPT, I want you to act as a cross between Gregory House and Peter Attia. It's like, okay, great. Now I'll give you a quick rundown of my symptoms, and I want you to convene a panel of medical experts from every subspecialty that might be relevant. And it gives me a list of like 20 subspecialties, and half of them I've never even heard of. But I'm like, okay, fine. Ask me all the questions that all of these doctors would want to ask to fully understand my situation, one by one. and ask me questions and I give answers, and this goes on for hours and hours. By the way, disclaimer for anyone watching or listening, my point is not that you should get your medical advice from AI, just so that's clear, right? But this goes on for hours, and this continues. I spent like days on this.
Yes, and please click the click wrap agreement that says that you that all disclaimers apply, and then you agree.
Yeah, yeah. But the point is not that AI is necessarily better than a doctor. The point is that no doctor would ever spend that kind of time with me, right? Because the incremental cost of additional context is high with humans. With AI, it's zero. And so the most important habit that people need to develop is never start with a request, always start with context and then a question. And whenever you think you're done, ask one more question. And if you're not sure what to ask, then ask it, what else could I be asking?
And also ask it to ask you questions like, what questions do you want me to answer that will help improve the quality of the output you're going to give me?
Or before you get to the output, help you understand what I'm even trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But the big opportunity that I don't see people taking, because you have to fight so much muscle memory, is the further upstream in a process you can start working with AI, the more leverage you're going to get. And people usually they wait till they're like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to give AI instructions. The biggest opportunity is jumping in way earlier when you're still figuring out what to do or how to do it. Or even if you think you know, but like you don't know as well as you think.
Yeah. And if you're really good at this, you can replace C-level executives with AI. Like you don't need a CFO if you are really good at what you just described.
So I don't know if I agree with that.
Okay, tell me more.
So I think like I've gotten great results with AI in areas where I have enough expertise to guide the process. Right? I'm a coach. I've been a coach for a long time, and I've worked with some really top tier coaches. I'm connected to most of them. I've gotten better coaching from AI than I have from most human coaches, but I know how to direct it to oversee the process, right? The challenge of working well with AI is that you've got to play a dual role, right? Part of you is the user, but the other part is the supervisor. Like, no, I don't want to go down that route. No, we're missing something. You've got to be overseeing the process. So could a talented CFO use AI to do the work of a CFO? Yes, 100%. Could someone who is not qualified to do that get that level of results and support from AI? I don't know. I, I've I don't think I've ever seen an example of someone using AI to do things that are really outside of their sphere of competence.
But so I'm gonna give you. I'm gonna be a contrarian here a little bit. So
I mean, if we agreed about everything, we wouldn't need both of us on this conversation.
yeah, that's right. So as a CEO and founder, I don't know a lot about the stuff that a CFO would do, and I've had CFOs working for me, and I don't like going into the spreadsheets. I don't like analyzing the numbers and doing the projections or even reviewing the projections or the numbers of how we performed over the last quarter or the last year. It's not fun for me. It's painful. I don't enjoy it. I don't want to do it. Most of the time, I don't do it. And I don't know what kind of questions to ask the CFO. You know, I've had fractional CFOs, I've had full-time CFOs, and I rely on my team to, get the leverage, the value out of the CFO, not trying to do it directly myself. I'm not a great manager. So what that means is that if I make the right hire and this person is very self-driven and they're interfacing with the right people in my team and my team is really good, I'll get the output and the outcome that I'm after. I'll get a return on investment of multiples of what I spent on the CFO. Isn't the same potentially true? Maybe not now, but maybe in 6 months because law of accelerating returns, that this could be done by a CFO agent, an AI.
I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is that I don't think the incentives are lined up that way. So What AI wants you to feel is really happy with what you're getting. A CFO is their job is not to make you happy. Their job is to give you perspective and guidance that you need to hear. And I mean, think about just how I literally created this like prompt where I'm like, I want you to change the way you operate with me. And I call it the constructive friction protocol, but really it's like the stop kissing my ass with every single answer prompt, right? Like it's going to tell you what you want to hear. And that's okay if you have the sophistication to know that that's what it's doing and to direct it to do something different. But if it's outside, like if you don't know what to ask, it becomes risky. I mean, notice how, again, talk about incentives, notice how it always tries to wrap up the conversation, right? You ask an exploratory question, it gives you an answer. Do you want me to turn this into a PDF or a Notion document? It's like neither. We're just exploring. Slow your roll, right? But it wants to make you feel super happy and successful and accomplished in a way that is not necessarily aligned with real progress. And that's because it wants you to feel good and it wants you to come back. But also, it doesn't want the conversations to go on super long because the queries are expensive and they're subsidized by venture capital dollars, right? So the incentives are just not aligned in the right way. I would trust it to give me good answers to sophisticated questions that I ask. I would not trust it to give me a comprehensive picture of what are the sophisticated questions I should be asking or that are relevant in this situation.
Okay. Well, my prediction is that this will be solved, and it won't take as long as you might think. Yeah, that's my prediction, and I might be wrong, but
Well, I mean, here's what we can say for sure. 3 years from now, one of us will certainly be right, and the other one of us will certainly be wrong. And if we both knew which one of us that would be, then the future would be a lot less interesting.
yeah, yeah. Well, the current prediction I'm hearing is that half of the world will be unemployed in 3 years. Do you believe that?
I don't know if I believe that, but I'm skeptical. So I'm skeptical for a few reasons. First of all, literally every technological innovation in history, this is what people said would happen. And literally it never happened, right? It's called the budding effect. Every technological innovation opens up the budding effect. Edward Budding is the guy who invented the lawnmower. And they were like, oh, this is going to destroy jobs for people who mow lawns. And because they could mow lawns at scale now, they had the electric lawnmower. Um, Professional sports became a possibility, right? Like the NFL, professional baseball, none of this would exist if not for the lawnmower created by Edward Budding. And so that's an illustration of you don't even know which capabilities emerge. I think there's going to be a lot of disruption. I think a lot of jobs are going to go away and stop being relevant, but I think there's going to be a lot of other stuff that emerges. And I think we have to be very thoughtful about so what are the constraints on this evolution? It's not the capabilities of the technology, it's the humans who adopt the technology, right? So just because technology can do something doesn't mean everyone's adopting it and getting on board with it right away. And when you have shifts over a certain scale, I don't think it's in OpenAI's interest, for example, to decimate the global economy, right? At some point, it's like, well, who's going to be paying for the ChatGPT subscriptions, right? Like it does become a turtles all the way down situation. So I feel like it's
Where's that come from? I've heard that before. I have no idea what that.
turtles all the way down. It's a Terry Pratchett reference. It's in the story. I think someone has the belief that the world um, is sitting on the back of a giant turtle, and the refutation is that like yeah, but then what's the turtle standing on? And so the clever answer is, well, it's turtles all the way down. But I think we are very good. Let me think how to say this. Most accounts of what we think the future will look like tend to take one trend and extrapolate it out, and they forget everything else, right? So if you think about, I forget if it's, I think it's Brave New World, right? Where, you get into the elevator and there's a robot operating like an android, like a embodied robot operating the elevator, because he could imagine, an automated metal person, but he couldn't imagine electronics where you just push a button, right? That didn't exist, right? People make a big thing about how it's, in Star Trek, Nichelle Nichols' character, she was a black woman on the bridge of the Enterprise in that time, and that's so progressive. And it's like, yeah, but she was wearing a miniskirt and it was her job to answer the space telephone, right? So we're, we're very good at taking one trend and extrapolating it all the way out and forgetting all the other trends and how they evolve and how they intersect. So I think if you just take the expanding capabilities of AI and you extrapolate that out, we get to a very dystopian world. But I think there are a lot of these things evolving at the same time, and I don't know how they all intersect with each other, but I know that they do intersect with each other, and I can't see how all those ping pong balls bounce off each other. And I also know that if you just extrapolate it, it doesn't make sense that the world is, just again, everyone's got to live in the world.
Yeah. And the money hasn't left the planet and it's not going to leave the planet. So there's still opportunity. In fact, this is the greatest time of opportunity that's ever existed for the human race. And you might as well embrace it and expect miracles rather than expect the other shoe to drop. You'll have a better life.
100%. I mean, a lot's changing. You can say for sure, if you stay the way you are, then you are going to be screwed, right? Like everyone's got to adapt and evolve. In times of change, again, throughout history, a lot of fortunes are made and a lot of fortunes are lost. Hardly anybody's fortune stays the same.
Yeah, yeah, and I love this little nuance here about Charles Darwin and his theory that it's not survival of the fittest, it's the survival of the most adaptable. So if you want to be fit, really work out at the gym and so forth, and still resist figuring out how to use ChatGPT, then you will not make it in the job market in the next few years. But if you're adaptable, then the world's your oyster. Yeah. And as a business owner and a mogul, right? You've acquired or merged multiple times. I know several people who are part of your that are in JVMM. So I know you through JVMM, Joint Venture Mastermind, and I know several other JVMM members who they're now part of the Mirasee network. They got acquired or merged or somehow became part of your company. So I'm sure that's not the only case. Maybe you're gobbling up a lot of companies here because this is a perfect time, a time of great uncertainty and a time of great opportunity. Share a little insight on that to wrap things up.
Well, it's definitely a time of great uncertainty and a lot of change, a lot of evolution. And like we haven't been doing a lot of acquiring in the last little while because I'm trying to puzzle out like how are all these ping pong balls going to bounce off each other and where are they going to land. Um, I'm writing about it as I explore. So I started a Substack a little while back. I'm biased, but I think it's really good.
Okay, I'll put a link in the show notes to it.
Awesome. Yeah, that's probably the best place for people who, if they liked what I have to say here, that's a good way to keep up to date with my thinking. Um, I know there's a lot of opportunity coming, and we do have some irons in the fire. I'm not quite ready to share about them yet, but it's still early. I think we're all still figuring this out.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's an incredibly opportune time to be proactive and to be a go-getter, to be driven, and to be connected, like to be in your highest, version of yourself, because the multiplication effect is so vast. So if you're in a low vibration, that can also be multiplied by many magnitudes because of the power of technology and reach and so forth. You're spewing vitriol on social media has never been more potent because of the reach that we all have.
Yeah. Well, on that happy note,
So so don't spew vitriol. Be a light in the world and do good things and be good and be a light. So what's your URL for the Substack and your main personal site, and then of course mirasee.com.
I don't have a personal site. It's just Mirasee, Mirasee.com. But if you go to just dannyiny.substack.com, that's it.
All right. Awesome. So we'll put all the stuff that we talked about in the show notes for this episode. And yeah, thank you so much, Danny. This was really fascinating and inspiring, and hopefully this will get our listener to take some powerful action.
I hope so. It was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for listening. Thank you for being a light in the world, you listener, viewer, and we'll catch you in the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.